Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. It's been a joy that you have chosen to be part of this unique conversation and to discover how you can play a part in digital missions and then to learn how you can faithfully carry out God's given mandate in our digital world. So, a brief introduction about ourselves, Russ and myself. We have a lot of similarities. We both are married with three kids, boy, girl, boy. We both serve in the digital strategies team with Crew Global, coaching and guiding our leaders to use digital to engage their world. In fact, we both lived in Orlando for 5 years with our families, though he's from Canada and I'm from Singapore. Well, two fun facts before we jump right in. Ross, what am I doing? Russ is an accomplished ice hockey player and used to be a referee in a minor league, actually, in Canada. I used to be part of a boy band who did gospel tours in China. Yep, a Chinese boy band, though my Chinese is really bad. So now that you know everything about us, or a little bit about us, we want to just give you a chance to know our heart also and our passion. We have a common passion, and we're really passionate about bringing the gospel to every tongue, tribe, and touch screen. That is the common passion we have, which led us to launch Indigitous about 7 years ago. And what is Indigitous? You might be wondering, or who is Indigitous? It is a global community engaging in digital missions to collaborate with the church, to empower the church to make Jesus known everywhere. So that's the really big heart of Indigitous, and we work across all churches and across many countries. Some pictures here to show you the diversity, and we have different cultures and languages, but one thing is common: digital. And through digital, we express and find unique ways to connect with our own culture and context. Now, one of the expressions some of you may be familiar with is through hackathons. Yes, Christians can hack, right? What we do is we bring about innovative ideas together to be the church in the cities or in the countries that God has placed us and to bring the gospel to where it's not. So innovation, radical thinking, and creative approaches are truly needed because we live in changing times. Okay, as we dialogue, feel free to post the questions in the chat. We'll try to get to it. But I wanted to just quickly ask you a few questions, so you may be familiar with these things. Like, what is this thing that you just see? Well, the slide sort of came out a bit earlier, but that's actually 5 megabytes of data about 60 years ago. Right now, your one image or picture probably is bigger than that file. Okay, let's give it a try here. Put in the chat, what is a good caption for this image that you see? Anybody? Give it a try. Too early in the morning? Nobody? It's quiet. Okay, people just laugh, haha. What about getting a phone 10? Okay. Right, someone said there is no space in our modern lives that isn't filled up with entertainment, socializing, recording, or commentary. So true. I recently came across this little chart here that even illustrates the changes that and approaches to succeed, or in this case, sales and marketing. And everybody here knows Mercedes-Benz, right? You've probably seen the luxury car in your city or country. They're about 94 years old. It's a very old company. Want to make a guess who is the car company that spends just a fraction of their budget on marketing but sells 3 times more cars than Mercedes-Benz? Want to make a guess? You wouldn't believe it. I was truly shocked myself. Well, Ford? No, not Ford. Yep, it's Tesla. They spend just $6 on selling one car. Look at that, $6 compared to 926. Look closely at their business model. Market, sell, build, and market. So it is such a radical thinking. That simply means that they are selling their cars even before they are made. How's that possible? Well, with 35.5 million followers on Twitter, the founder, Elon Musk, is right up there with the most followed entrepreneurs in the world. So that tells you why, that's a huge impact. But I just want to quickly, walk you through a few changing contexts that has impacted the way we look at life and ministry. We don't have a whole lot of time, but I've been recently reading this book called Disruptive Witness by Alan Noble, and he presents this quite well, and I want to recommend it to you as a read. When I talk about the culture of distraction, I'm not just referring to people wasting time, but it's also people distracting themselves so that they ignore the questions of life. So in his book, Alan Noble puts it this way: it's the continuous engagement in immediately gratifying activities that resist reflection and meditation. So what happens is that we get addicted, to novelty, and we're not prepared. In fact, we shun dialogue that is personally challenging, especially ones that require deep implications. So we don't have time to dig into this, but I want you to consider for a moment the impact this has on us, both for this particular point, the culture of distraction, but also the next one, to realize that its implications is both on how your message is delivered as well as how it's received by the person that you want to send a message to. So the second point, of course, is the growth of secularism. And when I say secularism, I don't mean that there are no beliefs. On the contrary, it means the multitude of beliefs. Or some people say it's the contestedness of all beliefs. In other words, we live in an age where all beliefs are viable or real or legitimate. That means that believing in God is just one of the myriad of ways that a person can choose to find human fullness or satisfaction. Can you imagine how this impacts the way we look at life and even the way we think about faith issues? I'll sum it up this way, and in the book it says it very well: distraction and secularism have shaped the way modern people tend to find or create meaning in their lives. So long as we're moving to the next thing, we feel that our life has some direction and therefore meaning. Russ, over to you.
And so as we consider the context that we live in, we believe that it is essential that we bring an unchanging gospel to a changing generation. What is the thing that people need more than anything else? It's to encounter Jesus and his life-changing message for us, the offer of hope, the offer of redemption, the offer of new life that he brings. But to do that, we've got to learn how to think and act differently because the world has changed. And one way to think about how to frame this conversation is that missions has always been about going where people are. And so in the church and with digital, we want to go where people are. Let's go to the next slide. So a few different stats about where are people today. These are some recent stats from Singapore about what our audience and the population of Singapore, where are they? You can see the second green icon there shares that almost 1.5 times the population, 147% of the population, has a mobile phone or a mobile phone connection. People have multiple phones in our country here. And then on the far right, active social media users, 80% of the population is active on social. And so if we want to bring this unchanging gospel to a changing generation by going where people are, we need to go and be present in these places with the gospel. Next slide. If you think about the amount of time that people are spending using social media, watching television online, playing games online. It's huge. This is just the average for internet users 16 to 64. And if you think about the lower age demographic of that, the 16 to 24-year-olds, the numbers are going to be even higher. Next slide. You think about the online content activities that people are doing. What are people doing? They're watching videos. 96% of people report watching a video within the next month. And if you're anything like me, who I'm right on the edge of the millennial generation, you're watching multiple dozens of videos every day online, little short snippets of funny clips. You're trying to learn how to do something, how to fix something in your house. You're trying to help your kid learn something. You're going online and you're watching videos on how to do it. And one more interesting stat, just to help us understand our current reality. These are the most used social platforms in Singapore: YouTube, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram. I know everyone has their personal favorite, but if we want to go where people are and we want to bring the hope of Jesus, we need to be present and active and engaged in these different places. Now, it's easy to get lost in all of these numbers. 147%, X million this, 100,000 that. I want us to realize that behind each of these numbers, behind every screen, is a person. And in Indigitous, we like to say, every number has a name. When we're looking at our analytics, when we're looking at how different things perform in digital, the impact that we're having on different social channels, we get lots of analytics, we get lots of numbers, but we love to remind ourselves, every number has a name. Behind every number, behind every screen is a person. And that person has a story, and that story matters to God. And I think in digital, sometimes we can sort of think that it's out there, it's not really real, it's some sort of like different thing, we don't really understand it. But behind every screen is a real person, and that person has hurts and needs and longings and dreams, and they're engaged with us, sometimes for a few seconds, sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes for a few hours. And we want to need to trust God that He's brought them into our lives for a reason, and that we have the opportunity to journey with them and shape a path for them moving forward. So Simon.
Thanks, Russ. Such an important reminder. Well, we have time for just two examples, and I want to show you a couple of examples. But when you hear these stories, I want you to ask these questions. What makes them work? Okay, this idea or this effort. Why do you think people are responding to them? And what other ideas come to mind for you? And I want you to jot them down or write them down somewhere. Okay, so the first one is this TikTok guy. I know some of you are on TikTok, but will not admit it. That's okay. But this TikTok guy has 365,000 followers. And guess what he does? He just reads scripture daily. Literally. He has a nice fancy background, but he just opens his Bible and just reads the Word of God and shares a little thought. He probably has influence more than some of our church pastors have any one time. What motivates him? What makes him do it? How has that inspired you, and what other ideas can you think of? Next one, boiling waters. Some of you may have heard of it, but if you have not heard of it, as I know I have some Filipino brothers and sisters here, it's a strategy driven by our indigenous community in Philippines. It's a very intentional Facebook strategy that has seen huge impact. And it started almost accidentally by a group of brothers that just want to keep each other accountable, but to really sow into our culture. And what they do simply is they use memes, inside jokes, often images that make you laugh, think, and share. It's so simple, but yet so profound. And in a short time, they already have 1.7 to 8 million followers and likes. And what they do is they use these funny humor to have an effective way to connect with the hearts of their audience, especially those who are unaware of Christ or of spiritual things, but they are curious. And their goal is to challenge their current worldly paradigms of love and relationships. So here are just very quick two examples that we want to throw it out there just to stimulate your thinking. But I know many of you came to this workshop or conversation to kind of discover, and we'll have a bit of Q&A later. But I wanted to share with you some handles that you can take away with, because you're asking, what do I do to connect with my generation? And what are some helpful frameworks that can get me started? So we want to offer you a few thoughts that hopefully will get you going. Number one, first thinking model or paradigm is this. You got to recognize that everyone is on a journey. Whether you realize it or not, we're all on a search. They are on a spiritual journey. And we live in a very complex world, so it is hard sometimes to really ascertain where people are. But if we would keep it simple, we could say they are somewhere on this scale of belief. Or you could say that in our digital world, we have this unique opportunity to connect with the unaware, the curious, the followers, or the guides. And all of these are part of the audience that God has called you to connect with. And we can invite each to move one step to the right in their spiritual journey. For example, if someone visits one of your web properties or uses a digital tool that you have, you want to discover where is this person on that scale of belief, and what can you do? What can you do to help them take one step towards Christ and towards maturity in Christ? So if you think they're curious, or if you know they're curious because they visited a site maybe on Thurs and they read something about faith and about why Christians are different during the pandemic, what step can you offer them to move towards becoming a follower of Christ so that they can be activated and mobilized for kingdom work? So this is a model, a framework, but it helps you realize that when you discover people who are on a spiritual journey, you can readily offer them a meaningful next step to help them grow. Russ?
And so we want to share with you a couple principles that as we work with our teams around the world that you might find helpful in developing a digital strategy that helps people on their journey. And so the first principle is that you really want to know your audience. If you think about a mission trip that you've been on, if you've ever been on a mission trip, what are some of the first things you did when you arrived on location for your mission? You had to figure out where to eat, how to pay for something, how to use transit, what the different norms are in a place, how do you get things done? And this is what we might refer to as decoding your audience. And it's no different in digital. You want to find out where are people hanging out, what are they talking about, who are they following, what are people doing in this space? What is your audience really like? What influences them? And to really understand your audience, you've got to be with them in their spaces to really understand the influences that are coming at them. Doesn't mean you need to agree with those influences, doesn't mean you need to like them, but you need to understand what is affecting and what things are coming at and what things your audience is engaging with. So first step is to really know and understand your audience, and that happens as you spend time with them in the spaces of their everyday life and where they go to digitally. The next thing that you want to do is figure out how to offer value. Now note, this is what your audience finds valuable, not just what you as a person or as a ministry or as a brand find valuable or the things that you want to push. What does your audience
really find valuable? And how do you do simple next steps that are relevant and are going to nudge people just a little bit forward on that spiritual journey that Simon talked about? So this might be a link to an article. It might be an encouraging word, like commenting on something on social media. It might be recommending a book to read. It might be posting a fun video that makes a little point. Maybe it's a weekly podcast that explores relevant topics. I love one of the things that my church here in Singapore has done during Circuit Breaker, and actually is continuing to do right now, is they offered a 15-minute kind of daily devotional time called Morning Mercies. 15 minutes from 8:30 to 8:45 before people started work, because they realized everyone was getting ready to go on Zoom. They're working from home, most people at the church. And so they said, hey, there's an opportunity for us to offer a short devotional time that we could do together to help us really build our muscle and our habits of meeting with the Lord and making sure we're starting our day off right. Just a simple next step, a 15-minute call meeting where one of the leaders from the church would share a short devotional to encourage people. That was a relevant next step for us as a church during Circuit Breaker. You've got to remember that people have a limited attention span, and that not everything can be serious all the time. But what are those simple little opportunities that your audience is going to find valuable and is going to help them move on their spiritual journey? Next, you need to show that you're listening. And one of the ways that you show you're listening is by following, by liking, by commenting, by promoting the work of others, to show that you're not just all about yourself on social media or in digital spaces, but that you have a good understanding of the people that are around you. And so you really need to focus on listening more than you talk. And then when you do talk, make sure that you're talking about the things that matter to your audience. But a posture of learning, a posture of listening, a posture of making others look great, and then dripping in a point of view over time in little bite-sized chunks is really how to be effective in the digital space. And then lastly, you've got to have a learning mindset. You've just got to try. There's going to be things that don't work that you try as a ministry in digital, or as a person trying to engage in the digital space. That's okay. The cost of failure is really low. You want to focus on having a presence over perfection. And the way you're going to hone your presence is just to experiment over and over again and see what sticks. For every 10 posts you make, there might just be one that really connects, but it'll connect deeply with people, and it'll really help them move on their spiritual journey in a meaningful way. So you've got to have a learning mindset. You've got to experiment. You've got to be willing to fail and then try again to see what really connects with people's hearts, and allow the Spirit of God to move through your efforts. Simon.
So what's your next step? What now? Well, Indigitous desires to offer you some practical suggestions, but I want to affirm you once again that the fact you have chosen to be here tells me that you really want to grow. And I really believe everyone can learn and take one next step. It doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to be a technologist. A lot of us are all just lifelong learners seeking to bring the unchanging gospel to our changing world. So we have a few things that we want to suggest to you, and Russ has already, brought home the point that we've got to know our audience. I would say you need to be a student of the people you're trying to reach. The better you understand them, the better you know how to position yourself to come alongside them in that journey they're on. So Indigitous has a persona creation kit, an excellent tool that can help you really wrestle with who are the people that you're really trying to minister to. So we will make sure that all the links are on one page and you can go there. So don't worry if you don't capture it right now. The second thing we want to challenge you to consider is maybe hosting a digital outreach or learning and equipping yourself how to do digital engagement. In fact, in May, we partnered with this global movement called Go 2020, and we mobilized more than 10,000 people around the world to share their faith. And you can too. You can bring your youth together to consider how you can reach out to people. In fact, one of the workshops that we are offering later is called Planning a Digital Missions Trip. You can even minister to people in Mongolia, in China, in Turkey, in Thailand without even needing a visa or passport. And that's how cool it is, within this space. So there are resources here again called digital outreach that we want to offer to you, and as the next step. And finally, you want to learn from a global community because we are all learners and we can all capture some ideas from others. Indigitous provides quite a lot of those resources on the blog, but specifically in the early part of this pandemic, we launched a series, a global seminars that were attended by 7,000 people and around the world in 4 languages, but you can pick one of the workshops, many topics to choose from, and they're all available on our YouTube channel. So here's the link you want, and we've created a website for you, a web page for you that you can find all your resources in that one spot, and then some. Right? We've added some other videos and other things that we know will be relevant to you and would help you take one more step. Do not be overwhelmed, right? And one of the cool things about a workshop like that is that you are also connected to other folks and you're discovering. Thirst is a wonderful partner and they have plenty of ideas as well. I'm so glad that we can come alongside also to learn from each other. Well, we want to thank you so much for taking time to listen to Russ and I, and we will take some questions at the Q&A. But for now, we want to pass the time back so that we can hear from John.